Hey, it's Cameron, and I'm going to try and tell you my views on the Marshall Plan in 3 minutes. So, for those of you who haven't heard of the Marshall Plan, it was something the US did after World War II, named after General George Marshall, who was the US Secretary of State under Truman for a while. Basically, it was a package of about $13 billion that the US made available to Europe around about 1948 for 4 years, $13 billion over 4 years, to help Europe recover from World War II. Obviously, Europe was destroyed after World War II. The US really didn't get touched at all because it's in a different part of the world. But the way that most people think of the Marshall Plan, I think, is the result of a tremendous propaganda campaign that's been run for the last 70 odd years that makes it seem like the Marshall Plan was an act of generosity, it was humanitarian aid, or it was a gift to the people of Europe from the people in the United States who felt sorry for them. And while it's quite possible that a lot of American citizens thought that's what was going on, I'm going to tell you what I think was really going on. It wasn't really about aid for the sake of humanitarian reasons to Europe. What was happening was that the US planners from the White House on down, business leaders and politicians, were really concerned that the US was going to go into another recession after World War II. They'd managed to ramp up the economy during the war to build weapons and pay soldiers to go and fight, and people to work the factories to build the weapons to go and fight, which was a great boost to the economy and really helped them pull out of the struggles that they'd been having since the Great Depression. But of course the war was over and all of that activity was stopping. It's what's known as Keynesian economics, when the government spends money to artificially boost the economy for a while. And the problem that they had was that Europe, who was one of their major trading partners before the war, particularly the United Kingdom, didn't have any money. They couldn't buy stuff, so America wasn't going to be able to sell the surplus of products it was making. It was going to have a massively negative impact on the economy. So the money to rebuild Europe was really to get Europe into a position as quickly as possible that they could start buying American goods and services again for the benefit of the American economy, not necessarily for humanitarian reasons. The second reason that they launched the Marshall Plan was to stop these European countries from turning to the Soviets for economic and political support, which was something the American strategists were very concerned about, because if more countries decided that socialism and communism was a good alternative to capitalism, and remember that these people in Europe had just been in 2 world wars that were caused by capitalists. Their countries were capitalist countries at the time of these wars. People were looking for an alternative, and the US didn't want didn't want these countries to join the Soviet bloc, because again it would mean the Americans wouldn't be able to trade with them. So it was primarily about trade. Also, one important thing to understand is that the Marshall Plan was one of the greatest transfers of wealth from the public treasury in the United States into the hands of private corporations and the owners and shareholders of those private corporations. The vast majority of that $13 billion that was made available as part of the Marshall Plan never left the country. Just went from the individual taxpayers into the public treasury, from the public treasury into American corporations and businesses, and they obviously did very well out of it. And this started a trend that America's followed ever since, where there's always some great emergency that's happening somewhere around the world. Normally it's a military emergency. Well, Saddam's going to come and get us, or Al-Qaeda's going to come and get us, or Kim's going to come and get us, or the Iranians are going to come and get us, or you name it, Putin's going to come and get us. We need to ramp up our military activity. And again, that means money going from individual taxpayers into the federal treasury, and instead of it being spent on roads and hospitals or education, it gets spent on the industrial military complex, which is provided by American businesses. So money just goes from individuals' bank accounts to the government's bank account and into the bank accounts of businesses who pay their CEOs and executives exorbitant amounts of money for being so clever to get their hands on that money. So that's a quick summary of the Marshall Plan. If you want to hear Ray and I talk about it for 3 hours, go over to acoldwar.com. Look at episodes 94, 95, 96, where we break this down over 3 hours and provide a lot of backing data and quotes from American political and business leaders in the 50s and late 40s, early 50s, and historians since then. All right, that was 5.5 minutes, not 3 minutes. I failed. I can't talk. I can't explain these things. It takes me 3 hours. I can't get it done in 3 minutes, but I hope that gave you a little bit of an insight into what I think the Marshall Plan was all about.